Like Jenny said, my name's Lauridsen. I've been with the city for about 10 or 11 years, most of that time doing code compliance. And we enforce probably 18 different ordinances. Most of them are in the nuisance section, a couple of them are in a couple of strange places. But today we'll talk about nuisance codes, specifically the ones that are likely to affect you as a landlord in the city of Fort Collins. But to start out with, we're going to have a little bit of code compliance jeopardy. And so this is what it looks like. Beth is going to be our Vanna White and pass out the prizes if you win one. And so the first question we have is, what is the maximum height a lawn can be without violating city code? 3 inches? More than 6 inches? Only weeds have a height limit, or 6 inches. Actually, it would be B. They can be 6 inches, but they can't be over 6 inches. What are they allowed to be? Oh, it is kind of a trick question. I didn't even get it. Yeah, okay. So it would be D, 6 inches. It doesn't matter if it's weeds. It doesn't matter if it's grass. If it's over 6 inches, and actually if it's substantially over 6 inches, the city will send you a letter on that. So
I think over here we have a winner. These are decks of cards. Do you want to explain the decks of cards?
Exactly. These are cards that go to students that are moving off campus, that are living on campus or living off campus already. And each card has a tip, a code, a phone number, a safety fact, something helpful and useful to someone living off campus. And they're put out by the community liaison, and you'll meet Adrian if you haven't already. So, okay. The next one, how long can you store trash in your driveway? Okay, the answer is B. You can't store trash in your driveway at all. Rubbish is restricted. You can't have it where it's, well, not even where it's visible. You can't accumulate rubbish. Trash needs to be stored in containers that are closed so the wind doesn't get them, animals don't get them, neighbor kids don't get them. The trash containers have to be stored where they're not visible from the street, except for the 12 hours before and the 12 hours after pickup time. So B is the answer to that. 24 answers would be how long your containers can be out in your driveway or at the curb. Okay. How long after it stops snowing do you have to shovel your sidewalk? Very good. And this is actually an ordinance that's been enforced in the city of Fort. Well, I don't know how long it's been enforced, but it was adopted in the early 1960s, so it's not anything new. It's important to this community. We're very aggressive in writing up unshoveled sidewalks, especially near schools, especially where there are community mailboxes, in areas where we know there is a lot of pedestrian traffic. Okay, let's see. You can keep an inoperable motor vehicle on your property if it is stored in the driveway, on an improved surface, in the garage or behind a privacy fence, or in the front yard. C. Exactly, C. Inoperable motor vehicles, including vehicles that have expired license plates, need to be stored where they're not visible from the public right-of-way or from ground level of an adjacent property. So, motorhomes are the same. Trailers, because they're not motor vehicles, as long as they're parked on an improved surface, then they're fine.
So a motorhome, if you have an extended driveway, wide or the length of it, if it's on your property, is that kosher?
The city allows that. Now, a homeowners association may not, but at this point in the city of Fort Collins, you can put your motorhome in your driveway. Yep. Her question is, she's seen vehicles parked on a vacant lot for several months, and if that was okay. And my answer to that is it depends on the zoning. If it's in a residential neighborhood, then it likely would be. It might be something that we would just send a courtesy letter for. You would report that. You can report it to the nuisance hotline, and we'll go over that. Or you can do it online with the Access Fort Collins and give that information. So, good question. Okay. Yep. How many unrelated people can live in a 6-bedroom off-campus dwelling in Fort Collins? And like he said, the answer is A, 3. There are some exceptions, though. There are certain zoning districts that allow extra occupancy rentals. So if it's not a low-density residential neighborhood, you can work with the city to be allowed to over-occupy that property. But yeah, the answer is A in almost all cases. Okay. How many feet from a door to a public place is smoking allowed in the city of Fort Collins?
That's right. Yep.
Yep, yeah, it is D. State law is 15 feet. The Fort Collins code is 20. We had it first. It seemed to be working fine, and so we didn't change that. And it's 20 feet from a door, a window, or an operating window, or a ventilation system. So when this went into effect, I have to say we have never received a complaint about smoking in a bar or restaurant in Fort Collins since we've had the ban. So it's a good thing. All right. You could be responsible if your tenant gets a noise ticket at your property. Is that true or false? Right, it is true. It's part of the city's public nuisance ordinance, and it basically is to deal with chronic problem properties where there are loud parties, the police are there, or if we're there, if we're issuing tickets or doing a lot of abatements, and it ties the behavior of the tenants of that property. Well, it actually ties that property to this ordinance. So something to think about, and if you have questions about it, Beth is the one that administers that, so she can answer your questions when we get through that.
Just one question there. So if they start getting this noise violations, at what point does that become a evictable or an eviction process, and does the city back you on that? That's the issue. On one hand, you're trying to do your best you can, and the other side is, well, no, you can't force them out, but you got to deal with the noise.
Right, and Beth may be able to answer that better. I would imagine it would be something in your lease that talks about violating city codes, receiving, you know, citations, summonses for loud parties, that kind of thing, are evictable offenses.
I'm not mic'd, so I'll keep this real short. But so basically, the city doesn't. The city can't force you to evict your tenants or tell you to evict your tenants unless you get 3 tickets within a year or 5 within 2 years, and then we do a civil suit under the public nuisance ordinance, and we could be seeking from the judge to order eviction if you're refusing to do that. Honestly, most, and actually all property managers and owners that I've worked with over the last, 11 years since the ordinances has been around, they take care of it well before it gets to that point. So, so we can't, it's between the eviction process between you and your tenants, and the only time we would get involved is if we're seeking relief of the problem through the court process.
Gotcha.
And Beth will normally send something even ahead of a real violation of that ordinance. If a noise ticket is issued at that property, she'll send you probably a notice to the owner saying, hey, listen, this happened and be aware of it. So. Okay, so you're wondering what the fine is in municipal court if they get a noise ticket? It's up to $1,000. I think that they will decrease that if the defendant agrees to take a noise class. If they're CSU students, there's one on campus, or if they're not CSU students, there's another one. But it's up to $1,000 and not just for one tenant. I mean, I've seen where they've written a ticket to every tenant in the house. So
this can refer back to the landlord if they don't pay the fine?
No, not if they don't pay the fine, if they continue to get noise tickets. That's when it could come back.
Yeah, the police write the ticket to the tenant. So the tenant is held accountable for that ticket, for the criminal misdemeanor of the noise violation. They go to court. Typically a first offense, it is $1,000, and they'll suspend like up to 700 of it on the condition they not have any more violations for a year. So it's incentive for them not to have any more, which is great. And then they have to pay that fine. It's only if the property gets 3 tickets in a year or 5 in 2 years without any effort to take care of the problem, then the city, it's a civil suit under the Public Nuisance Ordinance seeking relief of the problem.
All right, okay. Where can you legally park on your property? On the driveway, on an improved parking service next to the driveway, in the parking area on the street in front of your house, in the parking area on the street in front of your neighbor's house, or all of the above? All of the above.
A lot of people got that right, so who knows who was first? Who wants the deck of cards?
Right, yeah. So, you know, talking about trailers, they can have expired license plates, but they have to be parked on an improved surface. Any vehicle has to be, with the exception of one motorcycle or scooter or something like that. If it's parked where it's screened from view of the street, screened from an adjacent property at ground level, then the improved surface rule doesn't apply per the city code. Sure, and you know, that's really a big thing, and that's one of the biggest, I think, neighborhood issues is when people can't park in front of their own homes because neighbors are parking there, neighbors' friends are parking there. It's illegal, it's allowed, it's a public street, anybody's allowed to park there. But, you know, for your tenants, I would remind them to be mindful, especially if they're living next to someone who may be elderly, who maybe has, you know, friends that come visit them that are not as mobile. Just to be mindful of where they park and whose house they park in front of. But it's completely legal. You would never get a ticket for parking in front of someone's home. Yes?
What about parking a motorcycle outside your front door where it's in view from the street, or on a patio that's right there where, you know, the street is?
That would be allowed. It's an improved surface. And even if it weren't, you know, even if it were just on the grass, it might not be allowed. Again, a homeowners association might have a problem with that. Her question was if someone is parking a motorcycle on a porch or on a patio or on a surface that really wasn't designed for parking. And yeah, we would not, that would not be a violation of that ordinance. Okay, the city of Fort Collins restricts all indoor furniture in outdoor spaces. That's true, that's true. When I first started, you could have a couch on your porch as long as your porch was covered. Following a couple of fires and just seeing some really nasty couches and couches that were burned in riots because they were easy to grab, the city changed the ordinance where now a porch has to be completely enclosed for upholstered furniture to be allowed. But yeah, if it's manufactured for indoor use, it really doesn't need to be outside and can't be outside. And we look at roofs. We get a lot of couches on the roofs. All right. Okay, well, so that's the end of the Jeopardy. So I'm just going to go over most of the codes that we enforce. Our biggest ones are weeds, rubbish and trash, outdoor storage. Outdoor storage are things, they're not discarded materials, so they're not rubbish, but they're things that shouldn't be stored outdoors in a neighborhood. So tires, empty beer kegs, vehicle parts, ping pong tables. I'm trying to think. So that's that. Parking on yards, parking on unimproved surfaces and inoperable vehicles are big ones. Unshoveled sidewalks are really big. Not this winter. We hardly had any snow, but in most winters we spend a lot of time doing unshoveled sidewalks. Sidewalk encroachments, it's a code that we do for the forestry department. So if trees or shrubs are coming over the sidewalk or hanging too low, we enforce that for them. Smoking in public places, and also wood smoke from chimneys, so the opacity from that. We do industrial noise, which includes business noise, what it sounds like. It also includes music from businesses. It also includes outdoor events. So we spend a lot of time outside St. Joseph's Church doing noise readings for events over there. Camping on private properties prohibited. Grandma and grandpa can come in their motorhome and stay for a couple of weeks. That's okay. Dirt yards and dilapidated fences, that's our newest ordinance. And it basically is saying you can't have just a dirt yard, and you can't have a fence that's missing pickets and sections are gone, or, you know, it's broken, it's dilapidated. And the other one we enforce is the occupancy ordinance that restricts the number of people in a house. Yes. Did you? Yeah. She's asking how long you have to fix a fence if you get a violation notice. It's 30 days. That can be extended. None of it's etched in stone, but 30 days is what's written into the ordinance. Yes.
Who owns the fence, you know, in between houses? How do you deal with that?
Well, and that's a really good question. He's wondering about the ownership of the fence between houses. This ordinance is only for fences that are visible from the street or the sidewalk. So not all public right-of-way, not the alley or anything like that. And I think for that very reason is because it's too difficult to determine ownership. And we would hope that the neighbors could work that out. So this is really more for the aesthetic look, what can be seen from the street and what's clearly belongs to that owner.
So backyards are-
Generally not. If we can't see it from the street, it wouldn't count.
Is there any guidelines, if you can't work it out with your neighbor, where to go for fence issues? For example, on my property, the neighbors have some trees and bushes that are pushing the fence over. So we need to get them to remove their trees, and also the fence needs to be repaired, but we don't know who owns the fence, if it's shared or, so it needs some guidelines, a place to go.
Yeah, well, and it's actually a perfect case for our mediation program. And our mediation coordinator sitting in the back, she just started last Friday, so so we won't put her on the spot just yet.
Yeah.
But typically, yeah, we do encourage neighbors to talk to each other. If it's on the property line, usually it's shared, but there could be ownership one way or the other. It is not required that a fence is there. So, I mean, one of the options could be no fence. You take it down, you remove the parts. So, but yeah, we would highly encourage mediation for that kind of situation to help work it out.
And I don't know if there's any historical data in the city that would have those fences. If it was, you know, you might check with the zoning department and look at plat maps and development information and see if that was part of any kind of a development agreement or anything. But yeah, that would be a complete civil matter between you and your neighbor. So, yes.
My question is the mediation free for the neighbors? And the second question, the camping on private property, is that absolute not, or you can, if the kids want, do one night or whatever?
Right, okay. She has two questions. One is about the mediation program and whether there's a charge for that, and it is free. So, and I think Shay will do she'll speak on that. No? Okay, it is free. And it's wonderful, so take advantage of it if you need it. A lot of landlord-tenant mediation, a lot of neighbor mediation, that kind of thing. Your other question was about camping on private property. It is not intended for the kids that want to pitch a tent in the backyard. It's not intended for grandma and grandpa or someone coming to town to visit. It really is more about living in a camper or living in a tent on someone's private property. So. And I think it also speaks to, you know, people traveling and just pulling into a business to park kind of thing. So there's that.
We have
Yes.
a property that's in a neighborhood that's full of wasps. It's a problem. And you know, we've tried on our property to keep the wasps down. Is there anything that you can do about that as far as, like, you see a bunch of wasps flying into a neighbor's house or whatever? There's no ordinance.
There's really not. I mean, there are some ordinances related to beekeeping if you want to keep bees, but for wasps, no. It would just be a pest thing, and yeah, there wouldn't be.
I think if it's a rental situation, it could be considered a harborage, and building inspection could, but the tenants would need to report that. So if it's just someone's house and they don't seem to care.
Just eventually it'll get bad enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
To piggyback on the response, when you said the tenants could complain, so how would that go if the tenants complained about wasps on a property? Is it not the tenant's responsibility?
Well, you're going to get someone, I think, is Mike next week or today?
What was the question?
I'm sorry, the question was about tenant could complain about a rental housing situation. I was talking about the harborage, and so was it their responsibility or not? So it's just going to see when Mike's
Yes,
going
and
to.
next week Mike Chivo will speak.
Right, and he'll talk about rental standards, and that would be part of that and that process. Okay.
Any other questions before we move on?
Okay. Go ahead.
Are you involved in anything that has to do with dog problem, things like that?
We're really not. Animal control does the dog enforcement in the city. The only time we would get involved is if like a feces accumulation got so great that it would be considered rubbish. Then and it happens, seriously, yeah. Then we would get involved. But for barking dogs or dogs at large or dangerous animals or anything, that's all animal control. So, okay. Yes?
Yeah, if a tree's between the sidewalk and the curb, does that belong to me or to the city?
It probably belongs to the city in most occurrences. So if you have a tree that's between the sidewalk and the street, the city should be trimming it, they should be maintaining it, and that kind of thing. There may be instances, I don't think there are very many, where that little park strip is not the city's, but I think it is in most cases right of way. Tom? Yes, sir. Yeah. His question was if there's a limit on the number of pets someone can have. And to my knowledge, I think you can have as many as you can take care of.
So they could have 5 dogs in their backyard.
They could have 5 dogs in their backyard. And as long as they're caring for them and cleaning up after them and they're not barking or biting or anything like that, then that would be allowed.
There's some zoning restrictions on certain animals. You can't have chickens up to a certain number. But you can't have goat. We just recently had a case where someone had a goat in the backyard and the goats are not allowed so in most residential neighborhoods. So.
Right.
So just to clarify. Should we move on to some of the
Sure. Okay, so we do enforcement a couple of ways. We respond to complaints, and we get a lot of complaints. We also proactively patrol every neighborhood, every area of the city every few weeks. So we have 5 code inspectors. One of them mostly does occupancy, Dale Wood, and you'll meet him next year. So we really, next week. You might meet him next year. Hopefully you never meet him. And we just systematically go through every neighborhood and do that. So in almost every instance, except for snow, a notice is sent to the property owner. It's generally the property owner of record with the county assessor's office. If we have a different address, we'll, a newer address, we've gotten an updated one, we'll send it to that. But if the owner's address is different than the property address, we'll automatically send a tenant letter, and it's to that property. If there's a management company that we've been notified about, we can send a notice to a management company or a landscape company or Aunt Betty, whoever. We can send additional letters. And it spells out the violation, it gives a due date, it talks about if you need more time, if we've made a mistake, and that kind of thing. And then we've got a bunch of stuff that we put in there too that's just sort of outreach kind of thing. So after the due date, we'll do a re-inspection. And we have a really high compliance rate. Most people take care of whatever the issue is. If it hasn't been corrected, and if we haven't gotten a ton of complaints about it, and if it's not just a really nasty, stinky mess, we'll we call it a courtesy notice, but it's not very courteous. It's bright orange and it says final notice of violation. And it basically is one last chance. It says in case you didn't get the letter or in case you forgot or for whatever reason, we're going to give you an additional 24 hours to take care of it. So then we'll go back after that and do another one. If it still hasn't been corrected, we can do a couple of things. We can send a contractor to mow, to clean up the mess, whatever it is. We can issue a civil citation, which is, it's like a parking ticket. You just put it there and it's a $100 fine. And you still have to clean up the mess. So, or mow or whatever it is. We do citations for parking violations, parking on unimproved surface, because we don't tow vehicles. We do citations for inoperable vehicles, and we do citations for outdoor storage, because we don't want to take somebody's, possessions that have value. And so those are kind of our process for enforcement. We get a lot of really crazy complaints too, but here are some examples of the kind of things we see when we're out and about. And the one on the left is really common during move-in, move-out season. We try to be mindful of when it is, and that just can't get everything. The other one is a parking on yards violation. They've since improved this area. They've since, you know, excavated it out and put some recycled asphalt or something in there. So that's an example of rubbish, and this is another example. You know, clearly with this, it looks like there's some kind of a remodel or a restoration or something going on. But if it's there for more than a few days, we'll send a notice about it. It's really common, overflowing trash containers. Do a lot of those. Isn't that nice? Yeah. This is a really good example of a shrub encroaching over the sidewalk. And we would ask that. We do unshoveled sidewalks. That's obviously what that is. The invoices for those can be very expensive because in this case you can see it's a well-traveled sidewalk. Somebody's driven in and out of the driveway quite a bit. And let me talk a little bit about the enforcement of unshoveled sidewalks. When we go out and see an unshoveled sidewalk, and it's the first time this year that this sidewalk has been unshoveled, we have a little sticky note that we put on the door that says, hey, listen, this is a courtesy notice. You probably won't get another one this year, but we're going to give you until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning to clear your sidewalk. So it's not that you don't get any kind of notice. You get one notice every year, every snow season, unless it's a vacant lot or clearly a vacant house that's boarded up, then we wouldn't do that. But again, another parking on yard violation. The interesting thing about this is the only car that's in violation. The others, that's an improved surface. And so it goes from the sidewalk all the way up to the front of the house.
You want to talk about how much of the front can be improved?
The ordinance for parking on an improved surface, if you live on a street that allows on-street parking, you can't improve more than 40% of the front yard for parking. If it's, say, an arterial where there's not any on-street parking, then there's no percentage. You can improve the entire front yard for parking. And people have done that, yeah. This is not a violation. I think Beth actually took this picture years ago where they did a snow couch.
We see a lot of fun things.
We do, yeah. We really do see some really creative and innovative and
some we wouldn't put up
strange things. Yeah, yeah. People do it, yeah. So, okay.
Any last questions for us? I think
Yeah.
we're about at time.
Oh, we are. See, I said I'd be done early. Any more questions about city's code enforcement? Yes.
What constitutes an improved surface?
An improved surface is an inorganic surface. So gravel, recycled asphalt, concrete, road base, something like that. Not mulch. So just something inorganic that is, you know, it's not mud, the weeds aren't going to grow up through it. And it also has to have a border, so you couldn't just like dump a dump truck load of gravel in your front yard and then pull up on top of that. It needs to really be, it needs to be clear that that's what you've done is created a parking surface. Why do I keep saying service? Yes.
What was I didn't quite hear about the 40% of the front yard that could be improved with parking. What was that one again? If the house is on a street that allows on-street parking, so in a residential neighborhood and parking on the street is allowed, you can't improve more than 40% of the front yard. If it's on an arterial, so if the house is on Prospect or, you know, Taft, somewhere where there is no on-street parking, you can improve 100% of the surface. And people do and have, so.
All right. Thank
Okay,
you guys very
thanks.
much.